In August of 2025, I started to get serious about manifesting a bigger reality, more of my dream reality, specifically manifesting higher income, a new place to live, just kind of a new, more luxurious lifestyle. And immediately after I started that manifestation process, which for me consisted of daily visualization, feeling into the new reality, and calling the reality in, I started to see my sales in my business dwindle. They kept getting tighter and tighter, and I started to panic. So, September was the first month where it really felt like there were no sales coming in. I didn't really know what was going on. Granted, when that happens, I start to get in my head a lot and I start to self sabotage. And so there was a lot of that happening. In addition to like sales feeling slow, I also wasn't showing up as much as I could have because I was anticipating sales being slow and in this self sabotage pattern. Now, keep in mind that money has been one of the biggest teachers on my spiritual path. It has been the thing that I have been most attached to, money and success and achievement, because for me growing up, those were associated with love. Those were associated with validation. When I was successful, I received love and validation from my parents. And so, in my subconscious inner child, my subconscious inner child self equated success and achievement with love, which created this very severe attachment to it later in life that only got exacerbated when I started my business in 2018. And I really believe I was called to become an entrepreneur so that I could go on this journey of facing money, working through my money karma, my ancestral patterns around money, so that I could have the best environment to work on these patterns. Because as you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be tested on your self-worth. You're going to be tested on your ability to be visible. You're going to be tested, especially when you're a solo entrepreneur, and especially when you're an entrepreneur who's selling yourself, you're selling your own services. There's so much testing around your value and your sense of self and your identity and your ability to work with people, all of it. And to call money in as well, to make money for what it is that you're doing. So I know that that path was chosen for me so that I could learn these lessons, and I'm really grateful for them because I've evolved so much through my relationship with my business and with money. And also, my guides, my ancestors, they use money and they use my business when they need to teach me something, when it's time for me to raise to another level of consciousness. So, what I did by manifesting a higher standard of living was call in the next set of lessons at the same time. It was like they were like, okay, this is what you want. All right, this is who you have to become. And so they brought me through this series of lessons to become that version of myself, to become, to move to that frequency of the version of me that has the reality that I was manifesting, which started with slower sales, slowing down in my business. And so that started in September of 2025 after I started manifesting in August. And then it was a couple of months of me panicking and thinking I needed to get a job. And let me just tell you, I've been in business again since 2019 was when I got my first sale, but 2018 was when I had my idea for the business. And the thought of getting a job crossed my mind, but it was never something I actually pursued until September of 2025. I actually someone reached out to me from this health coaching company, and they said, we're looking for part-time health coaches. And I thought, why don't I just try this while I am going through this period of unknown, because I really wasn't sure what the slowdown in my business was telling me at that time. I thought maybe it was telling me it was time to pivot. Maybe it was telling me it was time to get a job because I could sense that there was something bigger that was shifting around business and what I'm doing for my purpose in general. So I literally thought, okay, maybe they're saying get a job while you go through this birth process of the new direction in your purpose. However, I got that job. They hired me and I worked there, I think, for like a week. It was a virtual work from home, part-time health coaching job, and I hated it and I quit and I quit. I quit within like the first 2 weeks. And so it just, for me, it was like, no, this is not going to work. I cannot do this. Physically, I cannot do this. So I'm just going to have to make it work, right? Even though money is slow to come in, I'm just going to have to make it work. So went on like that maybe for another month. And then I think in October, I was looking for jobs again. And I looked, these are all jobs, by the way. I used to be a health and fitness coach before starting my business. So 2018, I started my business actually as a health and fitness coach, but I had been a personal trainer, group fitness coach before starting my business. So I evolved into a spiritual coach in 2020. And so these job ideas that were coming to me were such a step back. It would be going back to what I was doing before starting my business. The next job I was applying for was a personal trainer job at Lifetime, which is a luxury gym. And I, applied. They invited me into interview. I did first in-person interview. The guy liked me. He was going to invite me back for another practical interview. And then again, I just sat with it and I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And I just emailed him back and I was like, listen, thank you so much, but I feel like I'm being guided to go in another direction right now. And that was my business. Again, I applied for multiple jobs over this period. A lot of them didn't call me back. A lot of them would be even further steps back into corporate, which I left in 2012. And yeah, so I didn't get any callbacks from them. And it was just so divine how everything played out. And the whole time, there was a lot of doubt. And then there was a lot of emotional processing that came with that doubt. A lot of feeling unworthy, a lot of feeling behind, a lot of feeling like a failure, a lot of fear around letting go of my business potentially because it was my dream. And I was like, I can't let this go. This was everything I've ever wanted. So there was just all facing my deepest fears, all of them coming up through this whole process, which of course was purposeful. So again, September until about, well, now really, but I will say that the intensity of get a job was definitely heavier in the beginning of this cycle. Whereas now I'm clear on what the path is, even though there are parts of me that are like, get a job because it will feel safer, it'll feel better. Now I'm just clear on, no, this is where I'm meant to be. And so as I was healing, as I was going through this, I was releasing layer upon layer of unworthiness, of fear, of failure, of all of my fears. And that's what allowed me to feel more secure and stable in the decision to continue being an entrepreneur. And that's also what led me to open up to the new direction that I was being guided in, which is to focus more on writing and to be a writer, which again was another idea that it was just never something that was in my purview. It was never something that I thought I would do. Even as a child, it wasn't my childhood dream. To my knowledge that I can remember, from a very young age, I kind of just wanted to do what my parents thought was the best thing for me to do. And that was working in business, working in corporate first, but then going into business for myself. So I did so much work to release everything that was holding me back from even considering that a journey as an artist was possible. And this wasn't the first time that I had gotten messages about becoming a writer. I've actually been getting those messages for a couple years now, maybe about 2 years. And they started with lots of clients coming to me when I did readings saying that they were being guided to write and getting messages, through social media content and things like that about writing. And then the messages started to get louder. I would hear clairaudient messages about writing. I was recently guided to watch Precious, which if you know the story of Precious, she works with Miss Rain, and Miss Rain acts as this mentor to her, and she tells her to write. And so just the message to write has been so coming through so clearly, but I've just struggled to figure out, what am I going to write about? I'm not a writer. I just really struggled to put myself into the shoes that I was being guided to fill. So because I was struggling so much, my spirit team brought me into all of these lessons around my business and fear of failure and attachment to success and all of that, because peeling away those layers is what really allowed me to finally say, okay, I guess I can write. After clutching onto my business with a death grip, finally surrendering and saying, okay, I could do that. I could do that. And again, not only writing, but From the world I came from, to me, it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm being guided to write nonfiction, but still that didn't feel right. And so I had to go through more lessons. I had to go through more purging to finally arrive at, no, I'm supposed to write fiction. I'm supposed to write a novel. I'm supposed to really get into my creativity. And it was such a huge identity shift that was being required of me. And that's why they had to bring me on this journey of letting go of the identity of business owner, of entrepreneur, of success, and, working for your money in this way so that I could move into this identity of creative artist, writer. So as we went through this whole process, I at first was really resisting it, right? I was really attached to my business. I started to loosen my grip as time went on. I started to get messages from my ancestors beckoning me to work with them. So I started going to my ancestor altar more and making that a habit, conditioning myself to go to my ancestors instead of what I would used to do was feel anxiety, feel fear around my business, and then just wallow in that and look to the external world, look to, okay, what could I be launching? What could I be doing? What am I missing? What am I not doing? And I would look there to try to solve the problem. And so instead, I started going to my ancestors. That's when everything started to change. Instead of looking outside, I went to my altar every single time. Sometimes it would be multiple times a day. I would spend almost the whole day in front of my altar, crying, praying, begging, pleading, whatever it took, giving offerings to my ancestors. Just because, and the reason for me it was my ancestors is because the patterns I was stuck in were ancestral. They're a part of my lineage, being stuck in this idea of survival and hard work and success and achievement and money being everything and your worth being based on that. All of that was related to my ancestral patterns. So my ancestors were right there to help me. And every time I would sit down with them, I would be like, are you sure I'm not supposed to get a job? Are you sure I'm supposed to be doing this? Are you sure? Like, I would just be questioning everything, doubting everything. And every single time with such clarity, they would come through. And the messages were so powerful. I always felt so supported. I always felt so held, and that's what I personally needed in those moments, was to be held and to know that it's okay to soften and to let go of that striving part of me that grasps and holds on to things. It was okay to let go, and it was okay to just be held. That was the lesson, because that was what I struggled, and that's what my ancestors struggled with so much, feeling like we had to do the work. We had to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But no, the lesson was like, you're divinely supported every step of the way, And it's safe to be in your heart. It's safe to live in your heart, and you will be supported in that. Once I made that shift and I started going to my ancestors more, that's when the synchronicity started to get louder and the confirmation started to get louder. They brought me to shows. I watched the show Fallout, which is all about Lucy, who leaves her bubble, her safety bubble in the vault, and goes out into the surface world. This is a post-apocalyptic show, so there are people who live below ground in vaults, and they're supposed to be safe and have all these rules. So she leaves that to go find her dad. She goes to the surface where there are no rules, and they were showing me in that show this message of, you can't go back to where you came from, because it was an illusion of safety there. It wasn't actually the security you thought it was. Having a job, focusing on achievement and success, that was an illusion of safety. And you have done this brave thing of venturing out into this new world. Stay there, keep going. Yes, it's challenging at times, but you can't go back. They also played the song by John Mayer. I ask for messages through song all the time, and one day I got this song by John Mayer, which was No Such Thing. And in the song he says, I just found out there's no such thing as the real world, just a lie we've got to rise above. And the song is all about how he's going back to his high school reunion, and he's like, they always told us that your life should look this way, you need to do these things. And he's like, I never believed that. I never thought that was true. I'm living by my own rules. And I could go on and on naming all the synchronicities that I've gotten, all the messages that I've gotten, but suffice it to say that every time, once I committed to asking for guidance and surrendering to the guidance, every time I doubted and asked, I got the confirmation I needed. I got the guidance I needed to stay the course and to not fall back. And all of this is a timeline shift. I'm in the midst of a timeline shift, and I can see the new timeline being born as we speak. But the old timeline, this was the moment where the old timeline was calling me back heavily, heavily. Go back and get a job. Go back and work in fitness. Go back and work in corporate. That was my old life. I've been out of that life for almost 8 years. And as soon as I started calling in a new, higher version of this new life, the old life was like, okay, let me check one more time. You sure you're done with this? You sure you're done with this? And for about 6 months, I went back and forth, not totally sure, not totally sure I was done with it, kind of wanting to go back to it because the fear of this new version of me was so intense. Now I can say that as I'm going through this process, yes, I am being guided to write a novel, absolutely, and that's in the works as we speak. But I've also been guided to revamp my business. So ultimately the message is no, you're an entrepreneur. You're running your business, you are going to be a writer, and I think that that's going to take over at some point. But in the meantime, I am meant to stay in this business, and the guidance was then coming through to start revamping it for something that's more sustainable. So I relaunched my membership, which is more sustainable monthly income. I started on YouTube. I started creating on YouTube, which as time goes on, as I build it, has the potential for sustainable income just through content creation. So I can see these little pieces that they're throwing out. It's almost like breadcrumbs that they're throwing to me of the guidance of these next steps to take that are over time going to build this new life again in a way that is more sustainable, that allows for me to enjoy life more, not strive so hard, not work so hard. Also, I was guided to turn off my one-on-one readings. That was a big decision because I've been going back and forth about that for years as well. And in my mind, it was always like, well, I can't turn them off because that's my most consistent form of income. And if I turn them off, I'm not going to make enough money. But I couldn't deny the guidance that was coming through as I kept surrendering and as I kept going to my altar. It was like, I know that this is what I'm being guided to do, even though it makes no sense. You think about it, after 6 months of my income being constricted, I blew through my savings. Turning off one-on-one readings really was a huge leap of faith for me. It was a huge risk. It was like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but you're telling me to do it, and I'm going to trust that this is the right thing to do. And I will say that for me, on this entrepreneurship journey, it's not easy. You don't always know how the money's coming in. And so I've had several instances on the journey already of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay my rent, and then boom, enough money comes in at the last minute. That was exactly what happened again. But this time without my one-on-one readings. So I got to move to a new level by showing myself you don't need these. Yes, it was scary. And I was going to my altar multiple times a day at that point. Like, are you guys sure? Are you sure that's what I'm supposed to do? This doesn't make any sense at all. But it was, and I saw that miracle come through, and that was important. It was important for me to feel that fear, to feel compressed, and to take that leap, and then to see the miracle with this new level of moving away from one-on-one readings, moving away from work that is very time for money based. And letting go of one-on-one readings really allows me to access more of my creative energy. So I understand why they're guiding me to do it. I feel more creative. I can create more content. I can show up more for the group programs that I offer for my membership, and I can have more time to write, which is what they really want me to be focused on. But yeah, it was scary because I'm used to this: show up consistently, people book readings consistently. I'm consistently like showing value, giving value to the world. So that feels good. It was just something steady that I had always relied on, that they said, you can't take that with you. That's got to go. This new timeline, that's not aligned with it. And I trusted and I listened. So where I am now is this excitement and anticipation for what's to come. I'm getting this guidance around expecting rather than waiting for the reality to change, just being in this energy of expectation. I'm also getting the guidance of being appreciative of everything that I have instead of focusing on what I don't have, because really when I do that, I realize I have so much more than I lack. And I'm getting the guidance to write, obviously. That's been coming through pretty strongly. And you'd be amazed how much resistance I had to that. So I get this whole journey that I've been on. I get it, because in the beginning, I really resisted it. It was like the easiest thing to do, just sit down and write. But I couldn't. I couldn't. I was like, why? What's the point? For what? What am I even writing about? There were so many limiting beliefs. There were so many questions. There's so much doubt that I really had to go through this transformation to even open up to it. And the last thing they've really been guiding me to do is play more, is to really look at these situations, these moments where I'm guided to do something that is a leap of faith, that is moving me to a new level of consciousness, to play with those moments more. What I just experienced was a lot of struggle and a lot of hardship internally around where I was being guided, when in hindsight, they were just telling me to do something I loved, to write, to do something that's more enjoyable. And, they're guiding me in these directions that, again, allow for more space in my day, allow for more ease and rest and joy and pleasure. But I resisted it so hard. And yeah, that's really what's starting to sink in, is just play. And again, I can't stress enough that emotional turmoil and release that I had to go through, those fears that I had to face, was necessary, because I would not and could not have felt safe in the ease and the joy and the rest and the play. I couldn't. There was too much subconscious gunk in the way. So I had to release that to get to the point now where they're telling me to play and I'm like, okay. They're telling me to write and I'm like, okay, I can do that. My story resonated with you. This month in Rebirth, we are doing a money drawing candle, which starts on April 10th. We are doing a timeline shifting workshop, which is based on everything I just went through. I'm going to be guiding you all to jump timelines yourselves. And we're doing a road opening candle with the timeline shifting workshop next week. So join us in Rebirth. I'll put the link in the description.